Okay, so hi, good morning or good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for our second session of our Esploro Analytics webinar series. Today we'll cover creating and editing analytics analysis and data visualization workbooks for Esploro. I'm Nama, I'm product manager in Esploro. I'm responsible for the portal, profiles, and analytics sections of Esploro. And we're very happy to have with us today Yoel Kortik, Ex Libris Senior Librarian, who will hold this session. Please note that you're all on mute. This is to enable us to record the session without any background noises. You can use the Q&A box or chat box at any time to ask us questions. We will review and answer them from time to time. This session specifically is intended for analytics designers and administrators who are creating the analysis, as we mentioned. And the session will be recorded and uploaded to the Knowledge Center for future reference, and I will send the link in the chat in a moment. So thank you, y'all, and let's enjoy this session.
Okay, thank you, Nama. And am I the host now? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. Before we actually jump right into everything, I want to point out here in this page here about the analytics webinars, I'll send this out in the chat right now. And so you'll all have the link in case you don't already have it. What we're going to be showing today, there are videos showing what I'll be showing. So if you want to review this again in a different way, not only by viewing the recording, instead of making a PowerPoint, I've made a video. These are two examples which we're going to go through using Esploro and data visualization. And after we finish both of these examples, we're going to take one of the examples and do the same thing in analytics so that we'll be able to see how something similar to what we did in data visualization can also be done in analytics. We'll also be referencing a few things that we mentioned last week. So last week we mentioned, or last time, that when a user has the role designs analytics, he or she can go into both data visualization and analytics and create reports or workbooks. So I'm logged in as a user who does have that. Let's even take a look at that just to make it more clear. I'm going to go look at this user. I'm going to go to the user details, and I have the role of designs analytics for Esploro. Let me put this in alphabetical order by role name. And we'll see here, I have Esploro Designs Analytics. Therefore, I'm able here to do access data visualization and access analytics for that matter. So let's start with the data visualization. And the first thing we're going to do is make a workbook. The report or the data that we want to present in data visualization is called a workbook. So we're going to create a workbook using the subject area Esploro Research Assets Usage. And we're going to see from what countries are people accessing our data. And along the way, we're going to point out different functionality that can be used for all kinds of workbooks in other subject areas as well. So we'll start with create, and we'll create a workbook. And now we need to choose a subject area. So we're going to switch to the subject areas tab. And in this specific case, we're going to choose Esploro Research Assets Usage right here. And either click Add to Workbook or double click. In addition to viewing the subject areas this way as a tile, we could click here on the top right to the list view and also have the list view. And we could scroll through and find what we want, or we could just start typing all or part of the subject area. I typed usage and I see everything with the word usage. So now let's choose Esploro Research Assets Usage and add to workbook. So now we have the subject area, Esploro Research Assets Usage. We want to start dragging fields onto the canvas where it says drop visualizations or data here, where I'm moving my mouse around. That's where we put the data that we want to visualize. It's called a canvas. So let's start adding some fields there. Let's start with under asset usage measures. We'll take the number of record views. Now, if I drag that in, this is a measure. It has a number sign next to it, meaning it's a measure. If I drag that in and drop it, it automatically gives us what's called a tile. We're going to talk more about a tile on our second example, but it's giving us automatically a tile. But I want a table because now we want to put other fields in there. So I can change this to a table. I click this little down arrow, and instead of the tile, I can choose the table. Now, we may want, before adding additional fields, to limit this number of record views by another parameter, for example, by the usage date. So we have a folder here, usage date, and I can filter this in multiple ways. Again, we're showing multiple ways in order to show how same functions can be done differently. So if I want, for example, all of those record views which occurred from 2021 onwards, one option would be to take the usage date year. I've got the usage year here, and drag it to the top where it says click here or drag data to filter. Notice it says now 2,613,193. I'm going to drag up the usage year here. And now I'll choose, for example, 2021, 2022, 2023. So now I have from 2021 on, it went down to 1,945,000. Another way we could do that is using something called an expression filter. So I'm going to remove this filter and do the same thing via an expression filter. It's not actually the same thing because I'm not going to hard code it. Right now it's hard coded to 2021, 2022, 2023. That means next year we'd have to add 2024 and then 2025. If I want to say greater than 2021, I can use an expression filter. So I'm going to remove the current filter. So I click these three dots right next to it, and we'll delete. So now that's gone. One way to add an expression filter, we're going to do a different method in our second example. One way to add the expression filter, which we'll do now, is if I put my mouse up on top here, you'll see this three dots here. It says filter bar menu. If I remove my mouse from the top, it's no longer there. Put my mouse on the top, it's back. So I'll click the filter bar menu and choose add expression filter. And now I can write an SQL that does the filter. So I can take this usage year, put it here, and say, for example, is greater than or equal to 2021. Now, on purpose, I didn't write it correctly. I forgot to put in the second apostrophe, or maybe I have the second apostrophe and by accident I have a space between the greater than and the equals. It's always a good idea before clicking apply to say validate. And it tells me it's an invalid expression because I have an error. I'll fix it, do validate again. Now it's okay. Calculation validated. And I'll say apply. So now it went back down to 1,945,499. It used to be 2,613,000 something else. So we know that the filter was applied. Now let's add the country as well. So let's take under the usage data details. We'll close these folders. Here we have usage data details, and one of the fields here is country. So I can drag that in either right here in the canvas next to the current column, or I can put it here in the rows, either before or after the current field. I'll put it before. So now I have all of the countries and the usage. Now, there are cases where the country is null. We're not going to get into the whole reasons behind that. But let's say I want to remove that. I don't want where the country is null. So two ways also we can do that, or actually multiple ways, but we'll talk about two. One way, again, we can drag to the top here the filter, We can take the country, drag it up here. And now if I click this null, now it's giving me only the null because the default is whatever we choose, it filters by that. But I can say exclude. If I click these three dots, I'll say exclude selections instead of the default include, exclude. Now I no longer have the null. So now we have a table with the country from where the user came when he or she viewed an Esploro asset since 2021. Let's save this meanwhile. I'll click save here. And let's choose our folder first of all. I'll put it under reports and Ex Libris. And let's call this, for example, I'll put the date here. It's 2023-06-27, so we'll know this is hours later. And we'll say this is table of country and number of views of assets. Okay. And save. 2023-06-27. Save. So now we have a very basic visualization, data visualization workbook, which is simply a table. However, we probably want to make a more detailed or a nicer way for the user to view. So we can change the current view. We can change this table to something else by clicking here where it's change visualization type, third icon from the right. We could also do it here while that visualization is selected. We could change it here. But before we change it, let's duplicate. So we'll have the table and then another visualization. So we can duplicate by doing edit, duplicate visualization. To do the edit, there's two options. We can either click these three dots in the visualization, come to edit, and then say duplicate visualization. Or we can right click and say edit, duplicate visualization. So now we have two visualizations, but I want to change one of them to be a map. So here on the one on the right, we'll choose the change visualization type. And we'll choose the map. This one here where it says map. Now we have a map and let's let that load. A map and a table. We're going to make the map much bigger and be able to see it better in a moment. Now we can see this part here is very dark. The darker, the more usage, the lighter, the less usage. So here, Russia has less usage. Western Europe has even less usage. But usually when there's a table like this or a map or any kind of a visualization, it's often preferred to remove what's called the outliers, the ones with way more than everybody or way less than everybody. Because we know this environment is from the United States, so the United States is very big. We want to see from where else are they coming. So let's remove the United States. So we could remove it like we did before. We could drag country up here and say exclude United States. We could make an expression filter and say where it's not equal to the United States. Or we can right click it here, United States, right click and remove selected. And that automatically made a filter on top and added to that one before where we said no, it also removed United States. Here you can see it's got United States and null with a line through it. So now we have the table and the visual and the map, and we want to go more in depth now. So let's say we want to drill in here. I'm going to remove what's called the data panel, the one all the way on the left, because we want the screen bigger now while we're working. So on the bottom right, we have two icons. One is toggle data panel, which is the panel all the way on the left. Then we have another icon called toggle grammar panel. The grammar panel is the one here. If I click, for example, toggle data panel, now the data panel is gone. If I click toggle grammar panel, it's gone. Click them again and they're back. We could also remove them by simply making them smaller and smaller and smaller until it's so small that it's gone. And then we can drill in here. For example, we see here Russia has a lot. If we start scrolling in, we can focus now, for example, on Western Europe. And we can see, for example, Germany is a darker color. United Kingdom is even a darker color. Here's a lighter color, France. So we can start pinpointing exactly where users are coming from or not coming from. For example, from Chad, they're not coming. And from the Western Sahara, no one has viewed any of our research assets. But we can scroll around here and see the different countries and where they're coming from. However, what we don't have here is a view of the usage over time. It may be, for example, that there was a lot of viewing in 2021, and then in 2022 there wasn't, or maybe the second half of 2021 there was a lot of usage. So we can also get the usage by year and by month. So let's duplicate the table again. We could just remove this table, but let's keep the table for now. So let's duplicate this one. We'll say menu, edit, duplicate visualization. And now let's make a line graph that will show the usage over time. So let's first of all get rid of the country. So while I'm focused on this visualization, this table in the middle, I'll go to the country and remove it. Now note, it only removed the country for that visualization that I was focused on. I still have the country for the table here on the left. I still have the country in the map. And instead of country, let's put in the usage year and the usage month, because then we can make a line graph and check out the usage over time. So I need the data panel again, because inside the data panel, I've got the fields that I want to display. So on the bottom right here, we'll say toggle data panel. Data panel is back. I'll make sure I'm focused on this visualization where I want to add the usage year and usage month. It's focused. You can tell it's focused because it's got this black line around it. And we'll come down to the usage date. And we'll add here the usage year. I could add it right here in the visualization or here in the grammar panel. And let's also put in the month key. We're going to put in the month key instead of the month because we want it to sort. If we put in January, February, March, April, it'll sort alphabetically, but we want it to sort chronologically. So we'll take the month key, put it right here in the middle. And now we have the year, the month, and the usage. But it's not very easy to see here the changes when it's in a table, so we'll make a line graph. So I'm going to remove again the data panel and the grammar panel so we have more room. I'll just scroll these to the left until they're so small they're gone. And I'll change this to a line graph. So I'm clicking change visualization type, make it a line graph, and now we can see the usage over time. Let's make the table a little smaller. We don't need that much room for the table. And now we can see the map. So we see where the usage is coming from. If we want to drill in, we can look at the table to get all the specific numbers. Let me close that Teams. Okay. And by the way, if we click on something on the map, on the table, it automatically appears on the map. For example, let's click on Turkey. So here, Turkey just came right here. If I click on Turkmenistan, now we have it on Turkmenistan. Switzerland. Now we've got Switzerland shows up here. So everything is connected here. Let's just see one more thing. If I scroll up here to Canada, note, if I click on the map on Canada, it's going to select it on the table. So if I select one visualization, it selects that same value in the corresponding visualization. But let's focus on this line graph. So we can see here, for example, that we had a very big increase here from 2022 December to the current date, to June 2023. That's something that might not have been so obvious by looking at a table. So that's enough for this visualization. Let's save it. So now I'm going to click Save As. To do Save As, there's a little arrow here next to the Save icon, which is a disk. Those of you who remember a disk that used to go inside the computer and save them. I actually have a box of them in my office. Next time I'll put it in front of the camera. So we'll say Save As. And now we'll say this is not a table of everything. This is a map and table and timeline of country and number of views and assets. Save. So now we've created two visualizations. One was a simple table. One is a table and map of the usage in the country with a timeline also. Let's in fact move this. We can drag these to different places. Let's put the timeline on the left, or let's put these back. Okay, let's leave it like this for now. Let's move this a tad over here. Let's just duplicate this one more time. Oops, sorry about that. And duplicate. Oops, let's make this. Ooh, let's go back to our original. Good thing we saved it. Okay. To go back, good opportunity to show how do I get back to everything. So there's an icon here on the top left, back. I'm not going to save everything we changed here. So now I'm in what's called the catalog. Here I can go around and see all my different reports. Let's go to where we saved ours. I clicked these three dots on the top and catalog. Let's go to where we saved it. And we put it under reports, Ex Libris, and map and table and timeline. Okay. Now, the whole reason we need to remember that we're making these visualizations is that we want somebody to be able to access them. It's not just some academic exercise to see how nice of a visualization can we make. We need to make this accessible to the user who's not going to come into data visualization and create or find a workbook. So we do that in Alma, in the analytics interface. So I'm just going to rename this because I see it says copy of. We don't want it to say copy of. I'm going to right click it and say rename. We'll get rid of the copy of. Okay. So now we want to take this and make it accessible to any user or any user who has certain roles. So I'm back in Alma. And because I have the administrator role, let's take a look at my roles again. Because I have Esploro Analytics Administrator, or if I have General System Administrator, if I have either of these two roles, I can go to the Analytics Objects list and create an object. An analytics object can be a widget, a dashboard, a scheduled report, or just an access to a data visualization or analytics entity from within Alma. So let's create one now. So we'll say actions and add new Esploro Analytics object. We'll select our folder. Now, because my folder says Ex Libris in it, I don't need to scroll through all the folders and find mine. I can just start typing Ex Libris. And now I don't need to go through all of these different reports here. I put in the date so I can just start typing the date. And let's take this one, the map and table and timeline. And the display name is always going to be by default the same as the report name. I'm going to remove the 2023-06-07 from the display name. And let's say save. Okay, let's go through the sections here. I'm in the summary. If I want to edit the summary, I can either just click on it or click this edit icon on the top right. I'm going to give it a description just so we can see later where the description appears. I will state this was made during the webinar on June 27, 2023. And save. Now, the share section is where I can either share it with specific users by clicking add user here and then starting to look for and add a user. Or instead of doing by specific users, we can add it by specific roles. If I say add roles, then whatever roles I put here, only a user who has that role will be able to access it. Let's say I want all of those that have these research roles. I know that the title of this session is the data visualization and not how to use the analytics interface inside Alma. But like I said, we want to remember it's not just some goal of how can I make a data visualization workbook doing this, this, and this. If no one can come and use it, then it's useless. So we need to make it accessible to users. So I'm going to say anyone with these roles will be able to access it. Then I can say here if I want it to be a scheduled report, which we won't do now. I can say if I want it to be a dashboard, which we won't do now. So everything is done here.
Yeah, I just want to
Yes.
mention quickly. So what they're seeing is the Esploro new analytics UI. So if anyone's unfamiliar with it, this is available in Esploro, and we discussed in the previous session how to switch to the new UI. And from
And
August,
our
you're
next
all
session
gonna
is about it.
yeah, and from August, you're all gonna see this interface, but this is all Esploro. So just a quick note. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So now any user who has these roles can do what's called pin to his favorites or her favorites so that he or she can access them in Esploro. Did I say Alma before, Nama? Is that why you mentioned that? Did I by accident say Alma?
Um, yeah, I think once or twice, but it's fine.
All
But
right.
I think maybe people are unfamiliar with this menu as well, so I just wanted
Okay.
to
So we briefly
let them
mentioned
know.
it last time, and our next session is focused specifically on this. So now if I say shared with me, I see all of the analytics objects that have at least one role that I also have. And I have this sorted by object creation date descending. So here I can say pin to analytics menu. I'm going to close that other tab just so we know it's coming not from the open tab. I don't have another tab open. And now when I come to analytics, I've automatically got it here. So I can access this from within Esploro. Now note, when I'm opening it now, I also have the data panel and the grammar panel. That's because I am also a user who has the designs analytics role, which is only usually one or two users in an institution. So I'm going to do the same as a different user. I'm going to log out of that user who had the roles of designs analytics. I'm going to go into a different user that doesn't have designs analytics or Esploro Analytics Administrator. So when this user clicks on analytics, I only have the shared with me and the out of the box analytics. I don't have analytics objects list, and I don't have the analytics objects list or the access analytics. The person who asked about the executive dashboard, I'm going to show that eventually. In fact, I can show it on this in a moment. So now, if I say analytics shared with me, and I take that same one and I say pin to, notice I don't have all those other options here either because I'm not a designer. I'm going to say pin to analytics menu. And now here I have it. Here it is, map, etc. And now when I click it, I don't have the grammar panel or the data panel. I can't change it. I can't start adding and removing visualizations, etc., because I'm not a designer. Someone asked, let me get the exact wording of the question. Let me come here and go into the chat. I'll show. He asks about the executive dashboard. So we have something that a user can choose. What does he or she want to be his or her Alma landing page? For example, let me get rid of what I've already got here. I'm going to say Esploro homepage. So right now, by default, this is my homepage. It's possible, however, to make a dashboard to make a Esploro workbook be my dashboard here. And that can be done if you come into analytics instead of, let's get rid of this one here, instead of what we have on the screen now. If I come into the analytics here, it's this homepage can be a dashboard. So I can choose, for example, this one here. And now you'll see, it'll take a moment the first time to load, a dashboard. Now this is a dashboard, a similar dashboard to the one we made. This is now my landing page inside Esploro. Every time I log in, I have this as my landing page. But we'll talk more about that next week or next session, because that's in the definitions of the analytics object. If you meant something different about the executive dashboards, let us know. But this was a development which came out more recently than the others. And let's move on.
Yeah, I
By the
think
way,
yeah, I think he was
if you,
referring to
sorry, go
sharing.
ahead.
I'm sorry. I think he was
Do you want to say
referring
something, Nama?
to, yeah, to sharing capabilities, which we touched on in the previous session, and you'll go in depth in the next one in terms of
Okay.
how to share.
So, by the way, if you don't see this new analytics interface, Nama mentioned that I'm looking at the new analytics interface, you can switch back and forth between the old interface and the new interface by clicking the user icon here on the top right, and then going to the feature rollout preferences and toggle on and off this new analytics interface. So if I toggle this off, then click analytics. Now I'm back to the old analytics. You can see, though, I still have the same pinned favorites here. This is the ones I pinned, but it's highly recommended that you already switch to the new interface, because by the end of 2023, there won't be an old interface. And the new interface is already out there. The majority of people are using it, and it's very stable. So I'm going to switch back to the new one here. So I'll say feature rollout preferences, new analytics, and it's back on. Okay. Let me see if there's any other questions, and then we're going to move on to the next example before we go to the analytics. Okay, so it's just about that executive dashboard. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So let's continue. I'm going to log out of this person and log in again as the user who has Designs Analytics. Now we're going to do, again, the same thing in multiple ways, but we're going to be looking at the Esploro research assets and see which ones do have abstracts, which ones don't have abstracts, and what are the percentages of them, and what are the amounts of them. And again, we're seeing different ways to do the same functions, and these can also be done in all of the different subject areas. And those of you who do Alma data visualization, same there. It's the same tool of data visualization for all of what we call the Ex Libris higher education platform, Leganto, Rialto, Esploro, Alma, etc. Okay, so let's pop back into data visualization. I'm clicking analytics and access data visualization. So let's say now we're going to create a workbook. Create workbook. And say here we're going to use the Esploro research assets. So we'll switch to the subject areas tab. We could start scrolling around for it, or let's just type part of the subject area, Esploro research assets, not the usage that we did last time, just Esploro research assets. Now, we want to know again which assets and how many in percentages do have an abstract and which ones don't. So we'll come here under the descriptions. We have a field has abstract. I'm going to drag that in. Now notice now it by default gave a table. Last time I had, in the previous example, I dragged in a measure and it by default gave a tile. Now it's giving a table because it's not a measure that I dragged in. Excuse me. Now let's say we want something about the abstract. For example, the title. So let's also put in there the title of the abstract. So let's take this and put it here. And now we have from the asset details the title, and we have has abstract. Now, if we want all of those that do have an abstract, I can take this field has abstract, again, drag it from the top and say no. Now it's all those that don't have an abstract. Or I could change this. I'm going to click on the filter again on top. And instead of this no, I'll remove the no. I'll say yes. And now I have all of those that do. But I might want to look at them together and say, these are all the ones that are no, and these are all the ones that are yes. So now we're going to duplicate this table and do the filter in a different way, a way we haven't done yet. It's going to be a way to do a filter which focuses on one specific visualization rather than the whole canvas. I'll explain more in detail in a moment. So let's duplicate this table first of all. So we already saw that we can duplicate by saying edit and edit, duplicate visualization. Now, I'm going to explain something about the different ways that filters can be used. If I take this has abstract, either from the grammar panel here and drag it up, or from the data panel and drag it up, if I say no or yes here, it influences the entire canvas. You can see both visualizations now are filtered to no. But it may be the case that I want to do a filter only on one visualization, which is the case now. So I'm going to remove this one. I'll click the three dots, removing this filter, and then clicking delete. We're going to add an expression filter, but a different one per table. You may recall in the previous example, we added an expression filter from up here on top by clicking these three dots and clicking add expression filter. And that too affected the entire canvas. But now we're going to do it per visualization. So I'm going to focus first on the left visualization. Left one is focus. There's a black line around it. That's in focus. In here in the grammar panel, we have an option filters, add expression filter. And this one is only going to apply for that visualization that I was focused on when I added this expression filter. So now I'll take this has abstract, drag it in, say is equal to no. Validate it, make sure it's okay. It is, apply. Now only the one on the left is filtered. The one on the right still has no and yes. The one on the left only is filtered. Now I'll focus on the right. Again, click filters here in the grammar panel, not on top because we want to do it for this specific visualization. Say add expression filter, and now I'll say has abstract equals yes. And let's validate. Calculation validated and apply. So now I have the ones with no on the left, the ones with yes on the right. Let's save this meanwhile. So we'll say save, and let's put this under shared folders, reports, ex libris, and again, we'll call this 2023-06-27, assets with and without abstracts, 2 tables. Okay. Now, let's say we want to know, we'll start by saying we want to know how many of each are there. So when we want to display an amount, that's a tile, sometimes called a performance tile. So we're going to add a performance tile here by dragging it from the data panel. So on the left here in the data panel, I'm going to switch to this tab on top called visualizations. And one of the visualizations is a tile. I can scroll through here and look for it, or I can just type here T-I-L-E and I'll get tile. I'm going to drag one here on top of the table that has no, and I'll drag another one on top of this table here that has yes. Now let's put in here the measure of the number of assets. So in order to get that field or any field, I need to go into the data section of the data panel. You see there's 3 tabs here. There's analytics, visualization, and data in the data panel. I'm going back to the data panel, and I'm going to take that measure, number of assets, and drag it here into the values. I could also drag it right here into the values, either here or here. And now I'll do the same thing for this one. Number of assets in the values. Now they both say 165,002 because I didn't put a filter yet in the tile. If you recall, I made an expression filter for this table, which has abstract equals yes, equals no, excuse me. And I made another one here, which has abstract equals yes, but we still don't have in the tile any filter. Now you'll see here there's filters. When I focus here, there's filters. I can also drag in a filter. For example, I'll take that has abstract, drag it here and drop it in the filters. And now I'll say no. So now it's 57,845 instead of the 165,002. Now let's do it here. And whatever I get here plus whatever I already have here, the 57,845 should equal 165,002. So here I'm focusing now on the right tile. Here too, I'll drag in the has abstract to the filters. And here I'll say yes. So this and this should equal, I forgot already what it was. We can actually see what it was. Let's put in another tile. I'm going to go back to the visualizations. I'm going to put another tile all the way on top. And let's say here, I'm switching to the to the data. Let's put in the number of assets here. So this plus this should equal 165,002. 7 and 5 is 12. That's correct. 5 and 4 is 9. Carry the 1, as they say. 10, it equals. Okay, so we have a total of 165. This many don't have an abstract, and this many do. But we may want to rename this tile, because now they all say number of assets, but this is actually number of assets without an abstract. So while I'm focused on this tile, on the bottom left here, you'll see I have a title, and it says auto. Auto, it automatically gives the name of the measure. I'm going to click that auto, and instead of auto, I'll say custom. And I'll say number of abstracts, no, number of assets without an abstract. And enter. So now it's renamed. And I can do the same thing here. Again, I'll click the title, auto, custom, number of assets with abstract. Okay, and I could call this one total. But let's do something a little different. This isn't giving me yet the percentages. Or it might be nice, instead of 2 tiles, to do a pie or a donut with the 2 numbers here. Let's in fact make a donut. So I'm going to remove these 2. I'll click the 3 dots here and delete visualization and delete visualization. I'll leave this one here. Let's call it total number. I'm going to change this title. On the bottom left, I'm clicking auto to change it to custom for the tile, for the title of the tile. And I'll call this total. Okay, now let's add that donut. A donut is like a pie, but it's just a big circle. So I'm in the data panel on the top left. Again, I'm switching to the visualizations tab. And now let's get a donut. Here's the donut. I'm going to drag that right here. Now, what do we want in that donut? We want the total number of assets. So I'm going to switch here to the data. Top left in the data panel, I'm switching to the data tab. And I'll drop in to the values the total number. Now I need to divide it up by something. So that would be dividing it up by number of asset. Does it have an abstract or not? So we'll take this has abstract field, drag that into, we'll start with the category. So now it's separated. I have 64.94% with, 35% without, and I got a total of 165. But it might be that I want to see this in color. So we can take this, I'm in the grammar panel now, and take this has abstract and drag it here to the color. But now, so now it's nice, but now I have the percentage. I might want, instead of the percentage, the actual amount, or maybe I want the actual amount and the percentage. So while this donut visualization is selected, you can see it's selected with the black line around it. I'm on the bottom left here of the data panel. And now I'm going to go into the values tab. Until now, when we changed the title, we were in the general tab. Now we're going to the values tab. And you can see here under data labels, it says percent, because that's what it's defaulting to. It's showing a 64.94%, 35.06%. And now I'm going to say, instead of percent, I'm going to turn off the percent and say, give me the value. So now I see the actual amount. By the way, you see in the middle, we have the total amount. I'll show that in a minute. Or we can have the value and the percent. So I'm going to click that value again next to the data labels, and I'll also click percent. So now we have the percent and the value. Show total is on. You see I have the total here, 165K. It rounds it off to the 1,000. I'm going to click that on. Now it's off. Now I don't see it. So I could get rid of this tile on top. I'm going to click the show total again because I have the total in the middle. We could also, by the way, change the font. I'm just going to click that. I could change the font here. Instead of 165K in bold, I can make it italic. Now it's italic. I can make it bigger. I can make it smaller. 36. 36 is too big. You don't even see it. Make it 8. Now it's very small. I'll put it back to 11 and I'll un-italic it. There's all different ways. There's the format here, which is now auto. I can make it an actual number. Or a currency or a percent, etc. If it had .00 after it, for example, the decimal places, etc. This is the abbreviate. 1,000 equals 1K because it says 165K. I can click there to off. Now I have the actual number. So now we can get rid of this tile. Delete this visualization. And now I see everything in one shot. I have 165,002 and the amount of each and the percentages. Somebody asked if you can change the Colors. Yes, you can play around with these colors. Let's not get into it now. I often say, let's not get into it now, and I end up getting into it. But under this, you can play around there. There's this formatting here. If you go into the color, you can play around with it. Yes, you can. Okay, so let's save this. Let's say save as and save this one without the copy of. So this is absets with and without abstracts, 2 tables, and a donut. Okay. Now, in the short amount of time we have left, let's see if someone wanted to do this in analytics, what would they do? So we're in we back in Alma, we'll say access analytics. So now instead of going into the data visualization, we're going into analytics. Now at this stage, people often ask, what's the difference? Why would I use one and not the other? It's really Wendy, I'm going to make myself a personal note here because I've actually wanted to do that for a while. I'm going to make myself a note here to make a video about changing colors. Video changing colors in pie and donut. Okay, and Namat, send me the. I'll send me the details of the people who requested it. Okay, so I've got that. So Wendy, I will do that. Thanks for the idea or the push because I wanted to do it for a while. Now I have a good idea, a good reason. Okay, so like we did before, we created a workbook. Now we create an analysis. And again, the difference between the analytics and the data visualization, some people like to make tables in Word, some will use Excel, some will make a document in Notepad, some in Word. Everything's got its own, people prefer things. You might prefer one more than the other. You might think one is easier to use, lesser to use, more rich in functionality. We've had analytics since the very beginning. So people are accustomed to it, although more and more people we see are getting into the data visualization. So I would take the number of assets and drag that in, just like we did in the workbook. And under the asset descriptions, we can put in has abstract. And we can make a filter here. Now it gets a little more complicated, though, here to make a filter per table. It is technically possible, a little more difficult, but let's see. There's no conversion, by the way, that recent question. If you have something in analytics and you want it in DV, you can't convert one to the other. You got to make it again if you want it in both. So now we have everything here. Let's make that. Let's just leave it as it is for now. We don't have too much time. So now we'll have a table. Now, if I wanted 2 of these tables, we have number of assets and has abstract. Let's also put in the title, because if you recall, we had the title. This is just giving us what we had in the donut, or before that in the performance tiles. So let's put in the title. Again, we'll search here for the title instead of going through all of the different parts. So we'll take this title. So now we have the title has abstract, yes, no, and number of assets. But now, if we wanted a table with yes and a table with no, and to display them, we would need to say here has abstract filter is equal to no. There are complicated ways we could, technically speaking, do this in one analytics analysis, but it would be easier to maintain, like if you ever have to make a change on it, to make 2 tables and put them in one dashboard next to each other. So this one, let's get rid of this number of assets. So now we have a table with all assets that don't have an abstract. And we could put in here the number of assets and now make a performance tile here. Here we can add a performance tile. I'm going to say new view, performance tile. By default, any new view in an analytics analysis goes to the bottom. So I'm going to drag it up to the top. First, I'll put it on the side. Then I'll move it all the way to the top. And let's save this. So we'll call this 2023-06-07, assets with and without abstracts. This is assets without abstracts. Now notice also it's the same folder, but we'll talk more next week. It's the same folder structure. When we went to catalog, this icon means it's a data visualization workbook, and this icon means it's an analytics report. So this is assets without abstracts. And this also we can change. Instead of giving us a rounded number, if we click the pencil here, excuse me, if we click the properties icon, let's close that. If we click the properties icon right here, this one here where it says XYZ view properties, there's a checkbox here, abbreviate values. So we're going to unabbreviate. So now we have assets without abstracts. Save. Let's take this and change this. Instead of is equal to no, we'll say is equal to yes. And we'll save this as abstracts with abstracts. And now we could put these together. We would need to take these. This is just one option. There's a lot of different ways to do these things, but if we were using analytics and wanted these to display together, we could create a dashboard at 6:59. So, I mean, it's 1 minute until the end. So I'm not going to create a whole dashboard. And I suspect that the easier way to do this would be to use the data visualization. It's in this case, if you want to have a table and an indication of how many in which assets do and don't have abstracts, and then a breakdown of percentages, etc., I would recommend the data visualization. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the session. I see there's a question about when these sessions are. I'll let Nama take care of the administrative part. Nama, if you want to comment on that, go ahead. I'm free whenever you want.
No, sure. So they're not planned to be weekly sessions, by like every 2 weeks, probably, but we will post our next sessions time once we have it finalized. It hasn't been mentioned. It will be posted in the page that Yoel shared at the beginning, and also
sharing now as well.
Yeah, and also we will resend reminders for once we have the actual registration open.
And the recording will be put here as well.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so thanks, Nama, for inviting me, and thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you,
Thank you,
for
Wendy, for
joining
that
us.
idea.
And we just want to mention quickly, thank you to Miami, who let us use their environment and their information. And stay tuned for our next session about the new analytics menu and creating analytics objects, which will let you know exactly when it's going to take place. And that's it. Bye-bye.
Okay. Have a nice day, everybody. Bye-bye.